This video is about SlowBrew. SlowBrew is our translation system that is intended to get a much more precise set of vocabulary into the translation system than is possible with Google Translate or with DeepL or any of the other systems. What we've done is to align languages at a very precise level of meaning so that we can get the correct vocabulary. And I explained this in the video. What we're trying to do is to get funding, to find funding for this so that we can actually bring it into effect. We have the system working on the back end, but not the programming to make it into a translation system. Right now it's a dictionary line system. The name for SlowBrew comes from the idea that that we're getting good quality. It's like if you brew coffee, you can either get instant coffee, which is fast but doesn't give you anything you want to drink, or you can go through a long, slow brewing process and it takes more time, but you get a much better quality. And that's what we're aiming at with a SlowBrew translation. So I apologize for the video quality. There are some technical issues that I haven't been able to work out, but if you concentrate on what we're aiming for, not on the video quality, I think you'll find this is hopefully an interesting and informative video. The way that Google Translate works, for example, and by this I mean pretty much any contemporary machine translation that you can get. Microsoft Bing, Systran, Google Translate, DeepL. All of these are taking text input on that a user puts in and giving out in another language that you select, giving out some sort of output. They're all working on using something that I call MUSA, the make up stuff algorithm. So you're always going to get output on the other side. If they don't have the terms in their system, if it's what's called out of vocabulary, they're just going to make something up. So if you put in ooga booga from English to Samoan, they're going to give you something in Samoan that is ooga booga. If you put in ooga booga from French to Samoan, from Chinese to Samoan, they're going to give you something in Samoan that is ooga booga. You, as a user, don't really know, am I getting something that actually exists, or am I getting something that's kind of a hallucination on the part of the machine translation? But there are big other problems as well. A word in English, I'll use the English example. If you've got something like shot, Google and company is going to say, okay, what is shot? Is it a shot in the arm? Right? Is it a shot from a gun? Is it a shot from a bartender? Or maybe a shot from a photographer? Right? Those meanings of shot are all going to be different things, different words in French, right? So shot in the arm is
piqûre.
Shot from a gun is
coup de feu.
Shot from a bartender is
No, we say a shot also for alcohols provided in such an infamously little quantity.
okay. And from a photographer?
Une photo.
Une photo.
Prendre
Okay.
une photo.
Okay. 4 different things. And in Swahili, they're going to be 4 different things.
Mm-hmm.
They all happen to match to this English concept of SHOT, but that's irrelevant if you want to go from French to Swahili. You're going to get really confused. If we say there are only 4 options in English for shot, and they each have a 25% likelihood, right? So if you're going from English to French, you've got a 1 in 4 chance of getting the right term. But now if you add in the Swahili to English, and you've also got 1 in 4, now it's 1 in 4, 1 in 4, so you've got a 1 in 16 chance on the Swahili to French conversion, right? Which is pretty low likelihood. Now, obviously, the machine translation has some juice. We're hopefully getting things from context, and so they have a better than 1 in 4 maybe chance, but then you have more meanings of shot. You've got a shot meaning a chance. So call these other language conversions very low percentage. One of the things that we're doing in SlowBrew, because we have in our database, we have things sorted out by meaning. So we have each of those separate senses of shot are separate things that we can find, separate entries in our system. We can show you, the user, shot from the gun, shot from the bartender, shot from the camera, and you can choose, which one do I mean? You say, I mean shot from the camera. Now we then take that and say, okay, well, we've lined that up to the French word photo, and we can give you that without having to guess. We're not going to say we're going to take a 1 in 4 chance. We know now at 100% that you've chosen this meaning. And if you're in French and going to Swahili, well, we've got French to this idea of a photo. And then the idea of photo is also aligned to the Swahili idea of photo, picha. So we know that the French side and the Swahili side line up. There is some noise somewhere there. We might make some mistakes, but our chances are pretty much spot on. That if you mean photo, we're going to give you the right thing in Swahili and the right thing in Chinese. But you have to choose it, right? You have to just choose your meaning on your source side. You, as a speaker of the source language, have a good chance of knowing what it is you mean. If this is your document and you're putting it into the system, you know what you mean to begin with. So what we're asking you to do is tell us, what do you mean? Don't ask us to guess, because we can give you this instant coffee translation. We can make something up. We can make a guess. But we can ask you to tell us, and you can tell us, and then say, okay, you worry about it on the source side, make sure that it's right, and then we can know what you mean. The next thing, multi-word expressions. Probably when you were learning English, learning English multi-word expressions, idioms are very difficult, right? Kick the can down the road. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean when I say kick the can? He kicked the can down the road?
No.
Right. To an English speaker, that would be fairly obvious. He wanted to put something off for later. So instead of doing it now, he kicked the can down the road. He's walking down the road, he kicks the thing, okay. And so he worries about it later.
Okay, so it's procrastination.
It's procrastination, yeah. And so there would be, so if we have kicked the can down the road in our database as what we call a lexicalized, if we've lexicalized it, meaning we've given it a definition, given it a meaning, now you can say in French, what would that be? Il a procrastiné?
Non, il a remis la chose à plus tard.
Okay. So he's...
Remettre à plus tard.
Remettre à plus tard. Okay. So...
I couldn't find any enabled video skills that can do that. Go to the Alexa app to manage your video skills and devices.
We just triggered the voice assistant. Nice.
Yes.
Another
okay.
shitty robot.
Right. So, if we've lexicalized, if we've given "kick the can down the road" a definition, now we can match it to a similar what you've just said in French, and we can match it to another thing in Swahili, and this. Now, if you come in with here we're just assuming that the person is starting with English, but it could be, we can have these multi-word expressions in any other language as well. We take kick the can down the road, and we see that somebody's put in their text, she kicked the can down the road, and they picked it up at the meeting the following week. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We say, okay, so kick, Here we have these various meanings for the word kick. Kick as in kick a ball, kick as in having joy from something. You get a kick out of something. But then we also say, okay, if we have kick, are there expressions in our database that start with kick? let's look and see if we have them there. Kick the can down the road. That phrase is there. Let's offer that to the user as an option. Did you mean kick just by itself or kick the can down the road? And the user can select kick the can down the road. And then we can then go and give them that in their target language. And that is something that contemporary machine translation has a great deal of a problem with, because unless they have in their source material direct translations between language A and language B, and if they have kick the can down the road and they also have that expression in some French document and they've picked up that these are the same thing, that these are equivalents, they might have a chance of getting those sorts of multi-word expressions. But they very well might not. The less resourced a language is, the less source material there is in a language, the less chance they have of picking up those multi-word expressions. And it gets much worse when the expression is separated. Because there are separable expressions and there are expressions that stay together. Run up. The run up to the election, meaning the period before the election. Here we've got polysemy as well as multi-word expression as well as separability. So run up to an election is a single phrase. Run up, as in running up an engine. The pilot ran up the engine. Actually, could be so the pilot has to do a test running up. Making the engine go with the brakes on, to test to make sure that the engine has enough power before they go onto the runway and start to take off. Okay, so you could actually run the engine up, or do a run up of the engine. Well, now running the engine up is separated. You can also run an idea up, run up the idea, right? So you run the idea up to senior management. And in this case, this is separated, run the idea up. But you can separate this by 20 words. I ran the idea that Jérôme had when we were at that meeting in Toulouse, sitting at the table and contemplating up to senior management. Right? There's this run and that up. Machine translation is just not going to get it. But SlowBrew is going to get it, because we're going to say, okay, we got run up and we know it's separable, so we're going, and it has this meaning of advance it to another segment. We can just check, as I said, does run exist? Let's check. Yeah. And run has all of these other things that are associated with it. Let's just test in our sentence, does it appear anywhere downstream? Run up. Now let's ask the user, do you mean run up with this sense of taking an idea and moving it to a higher point? Yes, that's what I mean. Okay, so we mark that, and then we deal with the other things, that were all on the inside as different as other terms that the user then also gets to select. With that, we've got polysemy, the different senses of run up. We've got multi-word expressions. We've got separated multi-word expressions. And in all of those cases, the user has been able to make the choice, or will be able when we are able to program this, to make the choice, what do I mean? And we've been able to find it and give it to them. Another thing from the database perspective, within the graph, we've got an association between a word and the forms that it takes. So if we've got something like run, in English we've got run, ran, running, runs. So she was running the idea up to senior management. Running, okay, we know from what you've done that running goes to run, or ran, she ran the idea, ran goes to run. And so we can just take those forms, bring them back to the meanings without having to have running up the flagpole, running up the engine, running up the hill. Actually, running up the hill gives you the option of actually a meaning of run and a meaning of up that are not linked together, right? But all of these forms can go back to the meaning idea and then we can go take the meaning and go to the other language without having to have in our system stored each of those forms for each of the meanings. And it condenses it, makes it much simpler. So we can take those inflected forms and get to the other language. Now, what's happening to get to the other language? Here we're talking about the front end, the source side. How we get to the target side is a different department. Here we're just talking about getting the vocabulary to the target side. We'll worry about getting the translation from one to the other, the syntax, the grammar separately. The programming for the interface is actually not that complicated. We just need to do it. And for that we need funding, and that's the whole point of this video, is to explain it and get people to have their appetite whetted, and then hopefully somebody is going to say, this is actually, I would like to beat Google. You know, I've tried using Google Translate. Sometimes I get things that are useful, sometimes I get things that are questionable, sometimes I've gotten I get things that are just wrong. I would like a translation system that I have more confidence in than Google Translate. I should say that when it comes to DeepL, people have this extra confidence in DeepL at saying, okay, somehow DeepL does it better. From the testing that I've done and the daily use that I put machine translation to, DeepL is not as better than Google Translate as they make the claim to be. And they make some fairly dubious claims about their superiority without giving any research-based evidence to show that they're actually better. Now, there is one thing where DeepL is better than Google Translate, better than Bing, in that if you go from language A to language B, they give you the option. They say, okay, actually, we are proposing this on the target side, but if you click, we'll give you other options, and you can choose the option you want. And I do this a lot because I can't write in French. I didn't learn French didn't start learning it until I was 39, and so the written French is, my daughter is learning written French in school from the beginning, and she does great in it, and it's going to be part of who she is, and I'm sure it's part of who you are as somebody who went to school in French. But it is freaking complicated. And so I've learned it as a spoken language. So if I go to DeepL, I can make a pretty good shot. Okay, yeah, certainly it's not that one. I mean this, not that. If I have a preconception of what I mean, and then DeepL gives me that as a choice, I can select that. Or gives me something in a VU formal sense, and then I say, you know what? No, I want the to form, and I can select the to form. That's great. But if I need a document in German, I have no idea. I could not read, I've got to go with the first thing it gives me. It's useless in that respect to be able to make a choice if I don't have a fair amount of educated knowledge about. So with DeepL, they're saying, so it's trying to learn from its users by saying, okay, if I've made this choice on the target side, somewhere it's logging this information as my choice is better than their choice. And so presumably they're going to use that for future translations, for future output. Now that may or may not make sense because they don't know if do I really know French, or am I just making some sort of arbitrary choice, or does the fact that I don't make a choice mean that their choice is the best one? We don't know. They don't know. They have no information. But if they're talking about machine learning and building towards artificial intelligence, they might be using that as data, and that's kind of suspicious. On the other hand, what we're doing on the source side, we have a pretty good assumption that the user knows what they're talking about in what they intended on the source side before they go to the target side. We can actually use that as data for future learning, for learning for future translations. Because what we're getting is very good annotations from the user. This is what I mean in this particular context. In this sentence, this is the sense that I meant. And over time, I think we will be able to actually get some pretty good predictive machine translation, so that instead of making stuff up, we're actually able to make really good, not just predictions on this particular sentence, but through inferences for things and end up being similar. So if somebody has rated themselves as a first language speaker or a high level speaker of the source language, then we can use their annotation, use their markup confidently. Otherwise, we can just disregard it.
Will users buy it?
Will they purchase it? We're not selling it. We're a non-profit organization, and what we're really trying to do is produce language technology that makes people's lives easier. So I'm not looking to sell it. I'm looking to finance it so that we can pay for the development of it and pay for the development of all the, getting as much linguistic data as possible into the system and making it available to people. But to actually sell people the service itself, no, I'm not. That's not what we're trying to do, because then we're saying, okay, somebody in Paris, somebody in Lausanne, Switzerland can pay for it and use it and be happy, but somebody in Accra, Ghana, somebody in Colombo, Sri Lanka can't pay for it, and therefore they don't get to use it, and then therefore they're excluded from it. That's not what I'm looking for. So will users buy it in terms of purchasing it? No, because we're not selling it to them. We're giving it to them. Will they buy it in terms of, will they use this instead of Google Translate?
That was my question.
Yes. And so here we've got polysemy. We've got a good example of polysemy, right? Buy versus buy. If you go to do a Google image search and you want an image of a rose, you say, okay, I want an image of a rose. Type in rose. Which image do you take? Do you take the first one, or do you look and say, okay, I need a rose to image, I'm doing a PowerPoint presentation for my students and I want, for some reason, a rose. Let me choose the third one or the 15th one. Right, you're going to scroll through and choose the one that works for you. Even more so, there's a dating site called OkCupid. The idea on OkCupid is that you answer 100 questions, 500 questions, and their algorithm finds you people who have a high percentage correlation with you, and say, okay, we propose that this person is going to be a good match. And they claim their claims of artificial intelligence and da, da, da. So if you were to go on OkCupid and say, find me a partner, and OkCupid came back with Melissa, and you say, you're not going to say, okay, Melissa is perfect for me. Okay, and they're telling Melissa that you are perfect for her. Okay, let's book a wedding chapel, invite all our friends, and get married. Right? That's just not going to happen. So you are at this dating site. You're going to go and look through a lot of different people and make decisions about who you try to get in contact with based on a lot of different criteria other than what the machine is telling you. And the machine only knows certain things. So the algorithm can only get you so far. What does this have to do with SlowBrew? Like you want to pick your image, like you want to pick your partner, we use the computer to help us find the right image. We use the computer for spell checking. But when we choose, okay, did I spell this correctly? Is this actually somebody's name that the computer doesn't know? Yes, so I want to keep it or not. But for some reason, people currently go to they've been trained that we just go to the translation program, we put in the text on the source side, and we pray that we get something right on the other side. But if we give them through SlowBrew the option to say, okay, this is actually what I mean, and I want to get a good translation on the other side. I don't want this instant coffee stuff. I want the good stuff. I think that there is going to be a significant market for that. That's my theory. That there's a significant number of people who are going to say, yes, I want the better quality stuff. I'm going to take the extra time, just like I take the time to spell check a document, Just like I take the time to make a choice on image search, I'm going to take the time to mark up on the source side what I mean, because that takes my confidence level from 1 in 4 to almost 100% that I'm getting the right vocabulary. And if I'm going from a language that's not English, because things always go through English, it takes my confidence level from 1 in 16 to close to 100%. The problem is basically funding. We can do this. We can make this happen. We can put out something that rocks the translation world. This is not, the programming part is not rocket science, right? And the part that is rocket science, the back end, you and I have done. We've got it there. We can, and what we need to do is make the interface and get the data. And that's one last thing that I want to talk about, is getting the data. If there's a term on the source side and you see it and we haven't marked it, that we don't have it, that we don't have that word, that item in our system, then we will tell you we don't have this, and we can ask you for it. Now, maybe you know it, maybe you don't. If you don't, we can put it into the queue to look for, to ask other people later on. Similarly, if you're looking for a sense and your sense isn't in there, you can submit, okay, it's not there, can I submit the sense? And we can take it and put it through our validation procedures, and eventually, hopefully, we'll get it for the future. We can't give it to you, we can't give you the translation now. The other thing we can do is, if we don't have the data on the target side, we've got the right sense on the source side, but we don't have it on the target side, we can tell you, I'm sorry, we don't know it. We're just going to admit we don't know it. And maybe you can give it to us. So we have a procedure that maybe you can give it to us, and we can, again, put it through the validation systems. Maybe not. Maybe you can't give it to us, but we can send it out to other people to try to get it. It's difficult to get that data. And if you have a multi-word expression and you're not the most confident of users, if there are a million people using this, some people are going to know how to use it, some people are not, some people are going to be authoritative speakers of the language, some are not. But if we can start the ball rolling from the source side, if somebody says, I don't think it's there, or if we say, whatever you've got, we just don't know it. So for example, if on the source side you say, okay, kick the can down the road, we don't have kick the can down the road, and you've put in kick the can down the road, you can mark kick the can down the road, though that's a multi-word expression. Here's the meaning, hopefully. And then we can then put that in front of other people and say, okay, does kick the can down the road mean what this person said it meant? And over time we can build that up. It's a difficult thing. It's a stage 2 of what we're talking about with SlowBrew, but then again, reason why we need the funding. We can put this to students, graduate students, PhD projects, and eventually we can hopefully get there, but we can't get there if we don't start. And so what we need to do is start, and if we don't arrive at the end point immediately, we're still going to get a system that's much better than current state of the art on the source side, and then we'll work on the target side as well. Lots of stuff to do, but SlowBrew, the SlowBrew approach and the back-end database that we've got, I think makes this a good bet that we're going to end up with something that can really knock the socks off, to use a multi-word expression, what's currently state-of-the-art machine translation.